Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Adventures in Book Hunting. This particular video was inspired by a conversation I had a couple of weeks ago with a very good friend who, like me, has a very passionate interest in local history. Particularly, the interest we share is in the history of McDowell County, West Virginia, which is uh, one of the nearby counties to where I am right now. Um, we started out the conversation talking about how difficult it was getting to find um, some of the interesting and important locally produced and authored uh, resources about our area's history. And particularly, we had a very nice conversation about a mutual friend that we had who uh, was a poet, a playwright, a novelist, and an amateur historian named Jean Batlow. Um, Particularly, this friend was looking for her two seminal works on the history of McDowell County, and I refer to them for reasons that are going to be come up here, and as the Blue Book and the White Book. The Blue Book, McDowell County in West Virginia and American History, by, of course, Jean Batlow. Unfortunately, Jean is no longer with us. She passed away just last August. Um, but she's a lady who had a real impact on the culture and preservation of McDowell County. Her probably most famous work was a play called Terror on the Tug, which for a long time was performed annually in Welch, McDowell County, West Virginia. Um, and that particular play um, was concerned the Matewan massacre, the assassination of Sid Hatfield and Ed Chambers there in Welch in McDowell County. Really pivotal points in local history and in the labor and mine strife that was very prevalent about 100 years ago, right at 100 years ago. Her second book is very hefty one. Pictorial History to McDowell County, and then the date, 1858 to 1958. Subtitle, From Rural Farms to Coal Kingdom, of course, by Jean Batlow. And right there, if we can get that focused, that is Miss Jean. I had the honor of knowing her for many years. In fact, first book I showed you, this was a gift from her. I was helping her in a project she had preserving a collection of vintage postcards from McDowell County and many of the communities in it. And for helping out with that project, she was kind enough to give me this copy of her book. And actually, I've had a couple copies of this, um, and had it availed to me for years and years and years. Very interesting book. Like I say, it's a pictorial history, so there are plenty of photographs, you know, all sorts of stuff throughout McDowell County. Um, this one was given to me, actually by one of my bookstore friends, just in the last few months. And prior to that, I had another copy I'd found that was just in horrible shape, and I wound up just having to recycle. It had been soaked in some kind of oil, and there was just no recovering it from how bad it had gotten. But my friend in the conversation 2 weeks ago, talking about Jean Batlow, and her two books, was once again expressing his concern that these were very difficult to find, and when you could find them, they'd become quite expensive. And we chatted about historical issues, economic development issues, community issues, sort of thing. We had a really good conversation. And after that, just kind of didn't think about these books or other local history books that I had until just a couple days ago when I found this book, which I'd been aware of. I've had it. Well, I've looked at it before. I know I've never owned it before. They Died in the Darkness. It's a history of mine disasters mostly in West Virginia from the late 1800s through, I think, 1969. And several of the disasters it chronicles are ones that were local. There are several I know in McDowell County that it covers, but also throughout the state and as I recall, in other parts of Appalachia as well. Anyway, I found this book, and like I said, in great shape. I got it as part of a local library's ongoing um, uh, book sale efforts. The particular public library I went to here, they have a sale cart and sale bins at their library, and I got a few things, and this one was the last one I pulled. Almost didn't even see it. But in any event, I brought it home, and I started thinking again about that conversation from 2 weeks ago about the expense of these books, and started thinking, pulling books from my local history collection, and started looking at them and researching what are they actually worth. Because to my mind, the only reason you would be trying to get these books would be if you're interested in the history, the documentation that they have, or, and I'd really not ever thought of it before, you're trying to make money. And either of those, I think, are worthy goals. Um, I help support a local independent bookstore, and the reason I do that is to make sure they're still in business for as long as they possibly can be. Um, but I just started to think, how valuable are these books? And like I said, we talked in vague terms a couple weeks ago about the expense of some of these books. So I just decided I'm going to sit down and do some research. And the first one I did was this one, and we'll come back to that. This will be the last one I tell you the price of. Uh, as far as what fair market value is. But I pulled my collection, and to start, we'll talk about the Gene Batlow books. Okay, first book, McDowell County in West Virginia in American history. Did some research, found different places where it's available. To my knowledge, not in print anymore. All the copies that are out there are all the copies there probably will be for the foreseeable future. And I found pricing on this book anywhere from $73 to the high of 300. And anybody who, if you haven't seen kind of the way I calculate value for books, I kind of have a real simple method for figuring out fair market value for a book. That is, I do some research, typically online, and my thought is if you can find a book similar quality, similar edition, uh, out in the world, on an online source or in a store source, that's the ceiling for the value of your book. Because if you want to sell it, anyone can go and get it from that other vendor for that price. So, for instance, low price I found for this, and in this kind of condition, this was in real good condition, $73. Uh, and I turned to this one, Pictorial History of McDowell County, and I don't know that there were two printings of this. Okay, this is the reprint, 2006. And for this one, I'm not sure how much the difference will make. All the places that I found it for sale online, places like Amazon, Abe Books, Biblio, Thrift, they're selling it. Let me look at my notes. Anywhere from around $40 to around $70. So once again, if you just want the book, and like I said, first printing or second, as far as I know, there are only two printings. Um, the original printing was 2003, and this one's like I say 2007, I think. From just looking. Once again, so this is a $41 book, but but again, that's for most folks that's a little bit of money. That's kind of expensive, and the markets for these books are not going to be huge, but the people who are interested in it very well, realize they're going to have to pay a little bit to get these. So once again, I started thinking, okay, I pulled about 10 other books, roughly 10 other books I had, in what I call my local history section. Just curious, what kind of value do I have? If I wanted to sell them, how much money realistically could I make? And of course, lesson, for me, um, I don't plan on selling any of these soon, but I think it's a valid thing to hunt books first for value. Like I say, I have very good friends who sell books for a living, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to go through a few of those, hopefully very quickly. Um, the next one I had two copies of. I have two ex-library copies of this book, General Andrew Lewis of Roanoke and Greenbrier, and that being the two communities in Virginia at the time he was alive. Andrew Lewis was a colonial figure, was a colonel in the Virginia militia, and led the militia forces of Virginia in a little battle called the Battle of Point Pleasant, like summer of 1774, maybe the fall of 1774. In any event, 1774. He has a city named after him, a little bit away from here, called Lewisburg, West Virginia, named after this gentleman. And if you've ever driven on I-81 between, I'll say, Christiansburg and Harrisonburg, there's a stretch of I-81 that is the Andrew Lewis Memorial Highway, once again named after this gentleman. And anyway, a biography by once again, this is no dig, an amateur historian um, named Patricia Johnson, and she's written many books on Virginia colonial issues. Self-published by, there's his monument. That's at Point Pleasant in West Virginia. In my West Virginia history book and in the 1980 edition of the World Book Encyclopedia that I had as a kid around the same time, the Battle of Point Pleasant was called the First Battle of the American Revolution. I don't buy that. I'm pretty sure most historians, and myself included, would say that happened at Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts. What he was fighting in were colonial wars against indigenous peoples. That battle was British soldiers and British militia, because we were all British then, against Shawnee and Mingo Indians on the border between Ohio and what's now West Virginia. At Point Pleasant, right where the Kanawha River flows into the Ohio. But in any event, further ado, uh, these books. I could not find a lot of information where people are selling them. Found a lot of places where people had sold them, which is good. But no, this book is going for $30. These are ex-library, so maybe not quite as much value as $30. But in any event, if you wanted to get this book and you weren't getting it from me, you're paying $30. And one of these is going to go to my friend who I had the conversation with. I have two. I got them from two different library sales. I know he'd be very interested. In fact, I think the first time I got this book, I sent him a message saying, "Hey, look at this. It's very interesting." Anyway, I'll be sending one of those to him. The other I will keep. Let's see. The next book I have, Wheels of the Mountain, which is an autobiography. Uh, James Elliott Craft. Um, James Elliott Craft was basically a poor, downtrodden guy from Kentucky who tried quite a few things to escape that life. Uh, Traveled to all over Kentucky, Ohio, and eventually made good. He founded a transportation company, Consolidated Bus Lines, that ran public transit from Huntington, West Virginia, all the way to Roanoke, and all throughout southern West Virginia. But this is his memoir about his life and doing that, and that's what the Wheels on the Mountains are about. It's about his bus line. Um, Another book that is self-published, pretty much self-published. It's McLean Printing Company, 1969, and for historical books written by amateur authors or oh, what's the word? Well, basically just putting their own work out into the world. Um, this company still exists. They're still publishing work by lesser known writers writing about topics in Appalachia, fiction and nonfiction. Like I said, they're still a going concern. The website is still active. Uh, None of the books I'm showing you today that were published by them originally can be bought from them. They don't have any of them in inventory because most of these books are older. In any event, let's skipping to the meat of the matter. I found one copy out in the world uh, from a vendor online anyway, where you can buy this, and it was a European vendor who wanted. Let me get this right. Uh, Basically wanted 30 euros for their copy in fairly similar condition. And doing a quick look, that's around $34 United States dollars. But anyway, like I say, more valuable than I would have thought. Oh, I meant to let you guys know how much I actually had in these things. This one, I did not have a recollection of how I got it, but I can guarantee you I didn't pay more than $2 for it. Because of where I hunt books and buy books. If I paid more than $2 for a book, I remember it because it's the exception and not the rule. And going back real quick to the General Lewis books, I'm one of these was part of a bulk sale. Fill a bag for however much, so practically nothing. And one I recall the sale I got it from because it was a sale just last year. I probably paid 50 cents for it. All right. Where are we next? Okay. This was originally an older book, Trans-Allegheny Pioneers by John P. Hale. A book about biographical sketches of various early pioneers in the Appalachian Mountains. Has a huge section on Mary Ingalls, and if you live within 50 miles of my voice and you're aware at all of the colonial history of the region, you know who Mary Ingalls is. She was kidnapped by Indians, lived among them for quite some period of time, and eventually was rescued and brought back to her family. But a huge part of this book is about that episode. And this is a third edition, second printing, and I found reprint editions of this fairly cheap for for $10 to $15 paperbacks, and you can probably get these at uh, places that sell local historical books. But for this edition, you know, third edition, second printing, the original book was 1896, and the third edition is from 1971. Prices ranged anywhere from for hardback covers, hardcover copies of this book, anywhere from 18 to $50. The closest match I could find for this one, I believe, was right at $35. This condition in this specific edition and printing. So anyway, like I said, once again, much more than I thought it was going to cost, and I'm sure I got this book for $1 or $2, probably more like one. Let's see. Oh, yes. This was a fairly famous book at one time. Bloodletting in Appalachia. Not in the best of shape. It's got some dings. No dust jacket. It should have a dust jacket. By Howard. Excuse me, Howard Lee. Howard Lee was an Attorney General of the state of West Virginia. Yes, there's Mr. Lee. And this book is primarily concerned with the mine wars and labor conflicts of the early 20th century, with an emphasis on the Matewan Massacre and, once again, the assassination of Sid Hatfield and Ed Chambers on the very courthouse steps in Welch, McDowell County, West Virginia. It's probably the most famous work on that event from 1969. This is still in print. You can get it. It looked like you could get it in a trade paperback edition for fit like $15-ish. Based on hardcover ones, let's see. I found up to $30, but because of this one's particular condition, I'd say no dust jacket, and it's kind of rough, maybe half that. All right. Oh, okay. This one I know exactly how much I paid for it because it was nothing. It was a gift from my sister. I have a sister who's considerably younger than me, who was a student at Concord University, Athens, West Virginia. Um, this one's in real rough shape. This is a first edition of this book from 1947. Um, like I said, very rough, has the dust jacket, but it has seen better days and was published by West Virginia Publishing Company in, like I said, as I said, 1947. And so it's a map of the Kanawha Valley, which is Charleston, West Virginia. And it is what it says it is. It is a record of the earliest settlers in Kanawha County, their homesteads, and as the area prospered, some of their actually very nice homes, many of which are still there. I don't think there are any photos, but there are some nice, like this, nice drawings of those homes. Did not find a lot of these, but the ones I did find for this edition, because there are newer editions. If this were in good shape, $85. This is obviously not in good shape. So I'd say considerably less, no more than 20, because I really can't find a similar copy. And in fact, if I were going to buy this book and was willing to pay 20, I'd probably be willing to go ahead and pay 80 to get a really nice one, or to get one of the later editions, probably in a trade paperback for about the same price, $20 to $30. Name it. This one, of course, is mine. Next one is interesting because of the subject matter. There used to be a call it a newspaper, the Hillbilly. Of This is a compilation of articles from that publication. The editor was a guy named Jim Comstock. One of those guys is Jim. But like I said, this is a compilation of his essays. Some humorous, satirical, but always interesting. I've had this particular book several times. I've found paperback copies of it several times. And actually, a lot of times the paperbacks are more valuable than this early hardcover. This is a first edition. Yep. This is the first edition of that book. And it's especially interesting because, if you can see that, autographed by Jim Comstock. I could not find an autographed edition of the book anywhere online. Numerous copies for sale, ranging from 34 to 50. I picked the number in the middle, say $40, because whereas you can get this very book, this very edition cheaper, that I could find, you cannot get one that's autographed. So I'm being conservative, picking the number in the middle and saying this is a $40 book. Right. Now, next two I'm going to try and do together. These are county histories. Raleigh County, West Virginia. And as far as I can tell, it's never had a dust jacket. It's very, just plain cover. It's published by the Raleigh County Historical Society. Raleigh County is the county north of me. And this is a fairly recent book, as you can see, by Jim Wood. And every county in West Virginia or Virginia probably has one of these. A kind of unofficial history of the county. Not actually read this one. Grabbed it because, of what it was. One of those book dragonish things where, well, I want to check more out about Raleigh County history, and we'll have this. This one is probably the most modern of the books that I'm showing you today. Published in the 90s. And in fact, you can probably buy it new right now. In fact, this one, it's a sales sticker. You can see that. Tamarack, $35. You can probably still buy it there for $35. And I'm not sure. The Raleigh County Historical Society website didn't have any indication that they're selling these, but they could very well have them laying around. So the ceiling on this one is going to be $35 because I can buy it new for 35. Anyway, but still, causes small print runs. These and small print runs make them expensive to produce in the first place. And typically people who buy these keep them. So, most of these are either in libraries or in private collections where they're not going anywhere. So if you want one of these, or any of these books that I've been talking about, you're going to have to pay more than you think you would. This one is probably the most readily accessible. I would not be shocked if there's lots of places where you can get this book. But once again, $35 book. This one like I say, it's in good shape. But you can get brand new for 35, so no more than 35. This next one, a little bit more. This is The Land That Is Pulaski County. Pulaski County there's a couple Virginia counties between me right now and Pulaski County. I get to go there every so often for work reasons. I don't think I actually got this one in Pulaski County, though. I'm pretty sure I picked this up. Both of these, the Raleigh County book and this Pulaski County book, I am almost certain I picked up at a Raleigh County library sale, which meant I paid no more than probably $1 for either one. My recollection is I got these towards the end of the week where the Raleigh County, the main library sale in Raleigh County, I think they have two now, typically one in the spring, one in the fall. Prices start around $2 for a hardback, and by the end of the week, if there's anything left, it's like $1. I'm pretty sure I got these towards the end. I took my chances on these. But yeah, $1 a piece. Now, this one, a little more expensive, out of print. And I found unsigned copies ranging anywhere from $60 to $85. It's published by, let's make sure, the Pulaski County Library Board. Makes sense. Entities like historical societies, library boards, local county governments, they're the folks who put the money into publishing these things. And there's the Pulaski County Courthouse. Been there more than a few times. But the neat thing about this one is, if I can find it, it is autographed by the author, Conway Smith. And then later, apparently, he signed it here in this ink, and later on somebody got it for someone's birthday. I can't read the name, but happy birthday, November 17th, 1982, with love from Mother. So a mom gave this to her child for a birthday present. The kind of present I would have loved to have got. But in any event, autographed. And autographed, I don't know. Oh, well, I did find one. No. On this one, I could not find an autographed copy. And this copy is at least as good, if not better, than any of the ones I saw for sale online. So I took the high-end price on this one. It's at about $85. Basically because it's an autographed copy. That's my thinking anyway. Now, which brings us back to one of the books I held up earlier, the one I've got most recently. Okay. And this one I know exactly how much I paid for. No question in my mind. I bought 6 books from a local library's ongoing sale. I paid $3 for the 6 books, a couple of hardbacks, and several paperbacks. The paperbacks were not very expensive at all. Hardbacks, but basically, average cost 50 cents. I paid 50 cents for this. The prices for this book are crazy, or at least some of them are crazy. But as I said, there's the author, written by a guy named Lacey Dillon. he wrote another book. They Died in the Darkness. He wrote a follow-up book called They Died for King Cole. Um, that was published in the 90s. Um, Once again, about mine disasters. And this is the most famous ones or infamous ones from the late 1800s through 1969. Um, but it's one of those books you may recall, yeah, several weeks, probably a few months back now. Um, I had a book that a vendor on Amazon was trying to sell for thousands of dollars, but probably wasn't worth more than a couple hundred. Well, deja vu. Um, Here's the breakdown. I found 4 copies available from vendors online. There's a vendor on Amazon selling this book or offering this book for $1,580. There is an eBay seller selling it for right at $1,500. Maybe they compared notes. And then I think something a whole lot closer to true value. Abe Books and Thrift have very close pricing on this. Um, Abe Books has this exact book, this edition, this cover, $228, and Thrift Books is selling it for $220. So by far the most valuable book I've shown you. And I think that's probably a pretty good indicator of what this book is worth, what the market will bear. That would be about $220. Like I say, this one is in great shape. Unfortunately, it's one of those where Mr. Dillon has passed away, no longer with us. But I got it for the subject matter. I was not thinking money when I bought this. I wasn't actually thinking money on any of these when I acquired them. But they're all fairly valuable. Um, as you know, once again, I'm not Tom Whaling. I'm not Mr. Moon of Moon's Rare Books. I don't get 600-year-old Bibles or 400-year-old Shakespeare folios. But for me, we're talking pretty high value. In the thumbnail, I'm holding up this stack of books that I've just gone over with you in detail. I paid less than $10 for these books over the course of many years. Um, and by my tabulation, what I think best value is for these books, approximately $640. So this stack of books that you saw in the thumbnail, like that, is $640 for an investment of less than 10. Couple things to look at here. Once again, coming back to my premise a few minutes ago. 2 reasons to own these books. The reason I own them, the reason I've acquired them over the last decade, is I'm very much interested in history. I'm interested in mine wars, in mine disasters, and the colonial history of Virginia and the Appalachian region. Very much interested in the people who made it tick, or like sources like Hillbilly, the popular magazine of the 40s, 50s, and 60s. With his fingers on the pulse of Appalachian culture. I'm getting them for those reasons. But once again, if you're a person who is in it for the money, like I say, I don't have any problem with being in it for the money. There are certainly books that I would get that I don't have this kind of attachment to that I would sell in a heartbeat. Um, you won't ever be able to pry If I Ran the Zoo from me, for instance. Still the most valuable single book I have. But now I have a close second. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is my second most valuable book, and I would have never dreamed that it was. I knew that the Seuss book was going to have a lot of value as far as money. Never dreamed that a book like They Died in the Darkness would. Once again, um, whether you're wanting knowledge or financial gain, local history, don't forget it. You can make money on it. But for me, being part of that local history, I'd much rather have the history. In any event, I think that's about all I have to say on this. Um, my viewer, you know who you are. Uh, be on the lookout. Hopefully, in the next couple of days, I can ship you a book. And for the rest of you, uh, thank you for hanging out to the end. If you hung out till the end, we'll talk to you again soon. Be safe, and in the meantime, have good book hunting. Thank you.